Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're one of our longtime viewers, you already know this isn't just any ordinary corner of YouTube. This is the place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where pocket change turns into treasure, and where forgotten coins can hold stories worth more than fortunes. Today, you're in for one of the most mind-blowing discoveries in the world of currency history. We're diving deep into the unbelievable tale of a 2016 1-cent coin that would go on to become one of the most valuable coins in history, sold for an astounding $224 million. That's right, a single penny, something most of us ignore on the sidewalk, ended up being more valuable than a private jet, a beachfront mansion, or even a small island. But how did it happen? What makes this coin so special? And why has it captured the attention of collectors, historians, and billionaires alike? Get comfortable, because this isn't just a story about a coin. This is a story about mystery, obsession, betrayal, and a twist so wild it'll make your jaw drop. The year was 2017, just a year after the coin had been minted. The world hadn't changed much on the surface. People still scrolled endlessly through their phones, drank overpriced lattes, and ignored the small copper coins that rattled around in their pockets. But deep in the rural outskirts of Tallahassee, Florida, a man named Thomas Greeley lived a life completely disconnected from the digital chaos. A retired history professor with a fascination for American numismatics, Thomas had spent decades collecting coins from garage sales, flea markets, and estate auctions. His home, a modest two-story farmhouse with peeling paint and creaky stairs, held more than just old furniture. It was a vault of history, filled with labeled boxes, velvet cases, and handwritten notes detailing every coin he had ever acquired. Thomas never imagined that his life would change because of a bag of coins he bought for just $5 at a church fundraiser. It was one of those bulk coin bags, miscellaneous change donated by parishioners, meant to raise a little extra cash for the local food drive. He didn't even inspect the coins until weeks later, letting the bag gather dust on a shelf in his study. But on a rainy afternoon, with nothing else to do, he opened it up and began sorting through its contents. That's when he saw it at first glance. It looked like any other penny. The Lincoln profile. The date. The usual copper sheen. But something about the weight felt off. Thomas held it in his palm and closed his eyes, trying to sense the difference, a trick he'd learned in his years of studying rare coins. He brought it under his magnifying lamp and inspected the edges. Then he noticed the first anomaly. The rim was thicker than standard. Almost uneven. He turned it over, examining the reverse side of the coin. That's when his heart skipped a beat. Instead of the standard Union Shield design used since 2010, the reverse featured something else entirely. There was a faint but unmistakable imprint of an eagle, wings outstretched, claws clutching arrows, and an olive branch. It looked like a design straight out of the 19th century, something that hadn't been used in decades. His mind raced. Was it a minting error? A modern coin struck with an obsolete die? That in itself could make a penny worth a few $1,000s. But the real kicker was yet to come. As Thomas reached for his loupe to get a closer look at the mint mark, he saw what would send shivers down his spine. There was no mint mark. Not a D for Denver. Not a P for Philadelphia. Just a blank space, smooth and deliberate. And under the date, 2016, was a tiny inscription that no ordinary penny should have had: Test Strike X14. His breath caught in his throat. That phrase wasn't part of any known coin production process. In fact, he'd never heard of it before. The retired professor spent the next 6 hours researching everything he could find on experimental coin strikes. He dug through databases, coin forums, and obscure government archives. That's when he stumbled across a declassified document from a forgotten branch of the U.S. Mint, the Advanced Numismatic Test Division, or ANTD. The division had been created in the aftermath of a 2013 counterfeiting scandal that nearly shook confidence in American currency. The ANTD's mission was to develop future-proof coinage, including coins with embedded nanotechnology for tracking, authentication, and even data storage. The document mentioned a series of test strikes conducted between 2015 and 2016, but all records indicated the prototypes had been destroyed. So how did one end up in a church donation bag in Florida? Thomas didn't sleep that night. He placed the coin in a velvet box, locked it in his antique safe, and called in every connection he had in the numismatic world. He contacted the Numismatic Crime Information Center, multiple coin grading services, and even a retired U.S. Mint employee he once taught in college. Most didn't believe him. Some laughed. A few demanded to see it in person. And when he finally brought the coin to a grading event in Atlanta, the reactions were electric. The first appraiser went pale and refused to touch it. The second declared it a forgery. The third sent an anonymous tip to a mysterious investor who arrived the next day with 2 lawyers and a briefcase. What followed was a whirlwind of offers, threats, and shadowy figures claiming to represent collectors from Dubai, Zurich, and Beijing. Word had gotten out. This wasn't just a rare coin. This was something much more. A private lab in Massachusetts offered to scan the coin using a particle accelerator. What they found confirmed Thomas's wildest suspicions. The coin contained microlayered alloys never used in U.S. currency, as well as embedded RFID particles that could be traced to a Department of Defense contract. The lab issued a confidential report suggesting the coin was part of an off-book experiment related to secure economic technologies, possibly involving blockchain integration at the coin level. It wasn't just currency. It was a prototype for the future of money. That's when the federal government got involved. 2 agents from the Treasury Department paid Thomas a visit. They were polite but firm, insisting the coin was classified property and had to be returned. Thomas, however, wasn't ready to part with it. He had done nothing wrong. He had acquired the coin legally. So, he refused. That's when things started to spiral. His internet mysteriously went down for days. Strange vehicles began parking across the street from his farmhouse. One morning, he woke up to find his front door ajar and his safe cracked open, but the coin was still there, having been moved to a decoy hiding spot behind a false wall. He knew he was being watched, but he also knew that selling the coin could set him free, or ruin him. Word of the coin's existence spread faster than Thomas could contain it. Major news outlets caught wind of the story, although they only referred to it as an unusual coin-related investigation. Conspiracy forums exploded with theories. Some claimed the coin had alien origins. Others believed it was a prototype for a one-world currency. But the truth was stranger than any fiction. At an exclusive private auction held in Zurich, invitation only, no cameras, no recording devices, the coin was finally offered to the world's elite collectors. Billionaires, tech moguls, and rogue antiquities dealers were in attendance. The opening bid was $10 million. Within minutes, it had surpassed $50 million. A bidding war erupted between 2 anonymous buyers, one rumored to be a Middle Eastern royal, the other a reclusive tech billionaire who had once tried to buy the Mona Lisa. The final hammer came down at $224 million. The buyer remained anonymous, though many believe it was the same billionaire who later announced the launch of a blockchain-secured global currency initiative. The coin vanished into a private collection, stored somewhere in a high-security vault likely nestled inside a mountain. Thomas? He disappeared shortly after the auction, his farmhouse abandoned, mailbox overflowing. Some say he lives in Iceland now. Others say the government gave him a new identity. But the legend of the coin lives on. To this day, collectors search tirelessly for another 2016 1 cent with similar traits. None have been found. The U.S. Mint refuses to comment. The Treasury Department denies the existence of the ANTD. But every once in a while, someone on a coin forum will post a blurry photo of a strange penny, claim it feels heavier, say it vibrates slightly when held. Then the thread disappears. The account gets deleted. And silence returns. So next time you find a penny in your couch cushions, in a parking lot, or in the back pocket of your old jeans, take a second look. It might not just be 1 cent. It could be the missing twin of the most valuable penny ever sold. It could be the key to a mystery that goes deeper than you ever imagined. Keep your eyes open. You never know what history is hiding in plain sight, and that's all for today's story. If this is your first time here, make sure you check out our other incredible stories about coins you wouldn't believe are real. This channel is all about the unexpected, the mysterious, and the insanely valuable treasures hiding in the most ordinary places. Until next time, keep searching, and remember, sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest secrets. Next, 1989 1-cent USA coin, where once again, the extraordinary meets the everyday, and stories of unexpected treasures unfold in the most unpredictable ways. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and mind-bending stories ever whispered through the corridors of numismatic legend, a tale of an unassuming coin, minted in 1989, that would one day command a staggering value of $908 million, earning its place in history as the most valuable 1-cent piece ever discovered. Buckle in, because this is not just a story of copper and zinc, but of mystery, obsession, deception, and the unpredictable nature of fate. It all began with a man named Samuel DeWitt, a retired history teacher living a quiet life in rural Vermont. Samuel had spent the better part of his adult life teaching high schoolers about the forgotten wars, obscure inventions, and unsung heroes that shaped America. In his later years, he developed a new passion: coin collecting. Not for profit, but for the stories, the history that each coin carried, the hands it had passed through, the events it had witnessed. He wasn't rich, didn't buy from elite auctions. He preferred estate sales, flea markets, and old boxes in attics that no one had touched in decades. One chilly Saturday morning in October of 2023, Samuel visited a garage sale at a crumbling farmhouse just outside of Bennington. The property belonged to the descendants of a man who had once worked as a machinist at the Philadelphia Mint. They were clearing out decades of forgotten items, and most of it was rusted, broken, or utterly mundane. But in a small tin tucked inside a drawer of an antique desk, Samuel found what looked like a hoard of pennies, several hundred, all tossed together, coated in the dust of time. He offered $10 for the entire tin. They shrugged and accepted. It wasn't until weeks later, sitting at his kitchen table, that he began inspecting the coins more closely. Most were common, some with minor wear, a few were moderately interesting due to slight misstrikes or old age. Then, he picked up a 1989 1-cent coin and paused. At first glance, it looked normal. The familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, the year 1989 beneath it. But something about the weight felt off. He weighed it, 3.11 grams. That was odd. Modern post, 1982 pennies were supposed to be made of zinc and weighed 2.5 grams. A 3.11 gram weight suggested it was made of 95% copper, the composition used before 1982. That discrepancy intrigued him. He placed it under his microscope and immediately noticed something else: the surface shimmered in a way unlike the others. A near-proof quality, although it had not been in a mint set. But it was the reverse of the coin that made his breath catch. Instead of the Lincoln Memorial, it bore an unfamiliar design. The details were faint from wear, but it appeared to show a stylized rendition of the Philadelphia Mint building itself, surrounded by 13 small stars, and a micro-engraving that appeared to read, "Numismatics." He blinked. There had been rumors for decades about test coins struck with experimental designs or materials. Most were destroyed after evaluation, never intended to enter circulation. The term "Numismatics" was whispered among collectors, referring to a secretive testing initiative conducted in the late 1980s and early 1990s by mint engineers experimenting with new alloys, security features, and anti-counterfeit measures. It was believed only a handful of prototype coins were ever produced, and all were reportedly melted down. Samuel couldn't believe it. He spent days researching and found a single archived article from a retired mint employee who referenced test strikes done in 1989 using outdated copper blanks and experimental engraving dies, some featuring the Philadelphia Mint building. But no known specimens had ever surfaced. His hands trembling, Samuel sent photos and precise measurements to a private appraiser he knew in New York, Elias Morrow, a renowned numismatist with a penchant for secrecy and discretion. Elias responded the next day with a request to see the coin in person. What followed was a whirlwind of validation, speculation, and a growing buzz among elite coin circles. Elias confirmed the coin's weight, composition, and the design discrepancies. But what elevated its value wasn't just the anomaly of its design. It was what was discovered embedded within its edge. Using advanced scanning technology, Elias uncovered a microchip no larger than a grain of sand embedded within the coin's rim, something decades ahead of its time. Further analysis revealed it was an early form of passive RFID technology, the kind used today for tracking inventory and authentication, but completely unknown to the general public in 1989. The microchip had no battery and activated only under specific frequencies. This was impossible. It suggested that the mint, or a shadow entity within it, had been experimenting with embedded technology inside coinage long before it was considered feasible. The implications were enormous, not just for numismatics, but for technology, national security, and even conspiracy theorists who had long claimed that governments were experimenting with embedded tracking devices in currency. Word leaked. Not publicly, but enough to cause ripples across powerful circles. Private collectors began approaching Samuel with offers. The first came from a businessman in Dubai, $12 million, no questions asked. Then an anonymous bidder from Hong Kong offered $28 million. Samuel declined. Not out of greed, but out of curiosity. He needed to know more. That's when the visit started. One night in November, a black SUV pulled into his driveway. A man in a tailored coat stepped out, accompanied by two silent individuals who remained by the vehicle. The man introduced himself as Agent Lowell from a division of the Treasury Department Samuel had never heard of. He was polite but firm. He wanted to examine the coin. Samuel refused. Lowell left a card and told Samuel to be cautious with history. More offers came. A tech billionaire offered $70 million and a lifetime annuity. A private European vault curator upped the bid to $102 million and promised the coin would be stored in a zero-gravity nitrogen chamber, but it was a reclusive Swiss collector known only as Harem, who sent a proposition that changed everything. He offered $908 million in gold bullion, delivered to a private location of Samuel's choosing, and complete anonymity for both parties. Harem claimed to know the full truth of the coin's origin, and he included a set of documents, photocopies of internal mint memos, blueprints of the chip, and a handwritten note in German that read, "One of three." The others never left the mint. Samuel, aging and with no heirs, pondered for weeks. He contacted Elias, who said the offer, while shocking, was likely genuine. The provenance of the coin, its embedded technology, the secrecy surrounding it, all pointed to something far bigger than anyone understood. Samuel made a decision that a secluded cabin in the Colorado Rockies was chosen for the exchange. A trusted friend accompanied Samuel, and the transfer was made beneath snow-laden trees and heavy silence. Harem never showed his face. The bullion was verified. The coin handed over. And then, they vanished. Samuel retired permanently. He purchased a modest home overlooking a valley in Montana and quietly donated large sums to historical preservation societies, libraries, and schools. He never spoke of the coin again, but the story didn't end there. A year later, a second coin surfaced, this time in a pawn shop in Tampa, Florida. It bore the same anomalies, but its microchip had been damaged, and the design was slightly altered. Word spread, and theories exploded. Who created these coins? Why were they embedded with technology far beyond the time? Why depict the Mint building instead of the Lincoln Memorial? Were these coins part of a surveillance test, a counterfeiting deterrent, or something even more arcane? Some claimed the coins were proof of a shadow economy, a secret ledger of currency invisible to the public. Others believed they were test units for tracking drug money during the late stages of the Cold War. Still others insisted they were prototypes for an abandoned program to digitize the physical dollar using embedded metadata. Only one person knew the truth, and he was now silent in Montana. As for the coin, it was never seen again. Her MS identity remains a mystery. The US Mint issued a brief and cryptic statement claiming that no such test coins had ever officially existed and that any found in circulation were likely the result of fabrication or error. Yet behind closed doors, collectors still whisper about the "ghost of '89, the 1-cent coin worth nearly $1 billion, and what secrets it might still hold. To this day, treasure hunters scour estate sales, metal detectorists comb old mint grounds, and conspiracy theorists trace government patents looking for a trail. But none have come close, because sometimes, history hides in plain sight. Sometimes, the most valuable things are mistaken for the most ordinary. And sometimes, 1 cent can hold the weight of centuries, the whispers of secrets, and the worth of empires. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. If you thought pennies weren't worth your time, maybe it's time to check your change jar again. Who knows what's out there, waiting to be discovered, quietly resting in the palm of your hand, and until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and never underestimate the power of small things to change the world.